Welcome to Unashamed Unafraid, a show unashamed about sexual addiction recovery and unafraid of coming unto Christ for healing.
Where we talk about real recovery stories, answer anonymous questions with experts, and share resources that actually work.
I'm your host, Steve.
And I'm your co-host, James, and we are Unashamed Unafraid.
Becky, what's up?
Not much.
she's thrilled to be here.
I am. I'm so thrilled. Yeah, I'm overwhelmed about how amazing this all is. The setup, and it's the legit.
We're the real deal.
You guys are the real deal.
That's shout out to the Darth Vader of audio, Jason.
Yep, that's you, man.
This isn't just like, and come into my closet and it's fancy pants. It's pretty cool. I'm impressed.
Hey, Becky, what did you do just now? I just went into this closet with these three sexual addicts. It was no big deal.
It's no big deal.
Spiritual experience.
We talked about stuff. It was revelatory.
So for those people who don't know you,
Yeah.
to use our mutual friend Kurt Frankham's words, put yourself into context.
What does that even mean? Okay. So for folks who don't know me, my name's Beckie. Hennessy, spelled just like the drink, but a lot of us here in Utah don't know that. I am a mom. That's like my full-time gig. So I have a 12-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old daughter, and a 6-year-old son.
Who acts like he's 3, so you really didn't miss.
He doesn't. He is. Oh my gosh. He gives me. So here's the thing. My 12-year-old was easy peasy lemon squeezy still. Super, super easy. My 10-year-old was a little tougher, but obeyed. My 6-year-old is because I thought I knew how to parent. And God was like, you sure don't. Here's Caleb.
You're basic.
So yeah, he's a handful, but I adore him. There's nothing like a mom's connection to her kid, to her son.
And his middle name, and I'm bringing this up because I'm a little hurt. We were talking tonight. Jason's wife is due here in a couple of months. And I said, that's great, you're naming the baby after me. He said, no, we're actually the middle name. We actually are using James.
Thank you, Jason.
Which I'm like, what the heck, bro? So I'm a little bit hurt. So I'm now just looking for a baby that happens to have my same name.
No. In fact, my exist boyfriend was named Steve. So...
Wow.
I'm just dropping that bomb right there.
Well, I can step. Are we safe? Is this okay? Have you processed that?
I processed it. We're good. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been in therapy for like the last 13 years of my life because I've been a therapist for the last 13 years of my life. And every therapist should have a therapist.
Agree.
Yeah.
Great.
So tell us, what do you do as a therapist?
Yeah. So that's my full-time job. I've been married to my husband for 16 years.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I remember when we went to get our taxes done when we'd been married for like 3 or 4. And we're like, yeah, we've been married for 3 or 4 years. And they're like, that is amazing. I'm like, what?
The guys over at H&R Block are like, good for you guys.
Can't believe they made it this long.
Right? So 16, I'm like, we've been married forever.
This is like an episode of Survivor.
Yeah. So I've been a therapist for the last 13 years.
Okay.
I specialize in trauma and have specialized in trauma since even before therapy. So I worked for DCFS for about 4.5 years.
Bless your heart.
Right.
Tell everyone what that is who don't know.
So DCFS is Division of Child and Family Services, and I worked for CPS, which is Child Protective Services. So I was the one who would go in and investigate whether abuse was going on, and then I would take the kids. So I was not loved for a long time by a lot of folks. And now I'll cross somebody in the grocery store and they're like, you look so familiar. I'm like, please don't be somebody that he took their kids away from. Please don't be. Anyway, so I did that. And by default, because I could do that and I could handle that and I could hack that, I got into trauma and started to work in trauma specifically with kids at first, and then branched out and did trauma with adults. And then maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, became more specific and focused on betrayal trauma stuff.
So tell us a little about what is betrayal trauma. Just give us a high level.
So I and I were just having this conversation.
Well, first I want to give the shout out here.
Okay.
Because if people don't know.
Yikers.
So I have a sister who's an LCSW.
Yeah.
And similar stuff. She was doing it in DC. And so if we were to compare the type of therapy he's doing that Becky's doing with weightlifting, she's like world class heavy weight. It's intense stuff.
It is.
I mean, this
is intense.
This is as intense
Yeah.
as I think it gets. So this is war proven tough metal in here. You're a big deal.
I mean, that's like, I'm going to cry. No, it definitely took a while to get. And as I was becoming licensed, I was a mom. Like I was having my babies. And so what normally takes somebody 2 years, it took me 4.5 to get my L to become an LCSW. So yeah, lots of hard. Anyway.
That's a whole episode.
This won't become this won't become a session for me. I have a therapist. I'll talk with him about it.
It's and so I'm in internship, so the direct hours are great for me. So you can just roll. But I guess the reason I want to bring that up is one, the purpose of this. What we want to talk about in this episode is like, right, unashamed. We're kind of by addicts for addicts, right? We don't do a lot of time speaking from the wife's perspective. We have one wife on the team. Sway's wife, Rachel. Rachel does all of our social media.
Oh, awesome.
And our social sensei.
Can we just talk about how amazing she is for a hot minute? Like, she is the coolest.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Oh, legit.
Yes.
Legit. And so she's kind of like our designated, like, so how will the women feel about this? Like, are we doing something super wrong? Or like, is this like, okay?
She's your measuring stick.
She's the measuring stick, right? And our wives all kind of look at it and chime in. And, Kayla and Christy have been on and so forth. But anyway, so we did a post early on. I did a post early on with Unashamed with Dorothy.
Who's amazing.
Who's amazing. One of the gurus here at Lifestar.
Yeah.
Been doing it for like 17 years.
She's like a guru. She's like a guru.
Oh,
period. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, she's my favorite to go and listen to at UCAP by far.
Yeah. So I did a post with Dorothy and I was like, look, Dorothy, like, what is it that the addicts just don't get about betrayal trauma? Like, don't talk to me about like, hey, everyone, here's what it is. I'm like, tell me what me as an addict, just like, it isn't clicking. I don't get it. Talk to me straight. And I think one of those big points, and this is what I kind of want to lead you in with, is where James is going, is you've seen trauma across the spectrum.
Yes.
Like all sorts of trauma.
Correct.
And I think one thing that addicts struggle with, and like I struggle with, is we have this buzzword of betrayal trauma, and we make it sound like a really big deal. And it's hard to kind of internalize, I think, for some men, because it's like, you didn't go to war.
Yeah.
You weren't raped.
Right.
Like, people throw words, PTSD and this is abusive. And people are like, what? Like, I lied to you about my porn addiction. I haven't even slept with anyone else. What do you mean I abused you?
Sure.
Like, I didn't hit you. Like, I didn't rape you. Like, I did. Right. And so you've seen the whole spectrum. So like, is that an accurate label?
Betrayal trauma?
Yeah. Like, is this trauma?
Yeah. Yes. In the therapy world, a lot of times it's relational trauma. Like, that's what it's called, which I think
That's the clinical term.
Right?
Yeah.
And maybe that just speaks better to my therapist's brain because it puts it in the box that it belongs in, like with that.
Yeah. Betrayal trauma is the buzzword.
Right. But it definitely is trauma. So there's been research done. Who I would call the guru is Barbara Steffens, who has talked a lot about and did a lot of research on how women who have been betrayed, especially in sexual addiction space, how their symptomology, the way that they're showing up, the things that they're saying resemble or replicate what somebody who has been in those more classic traumatic situations have been saying. And so I think for her, it kind of clicked as like, wait a minute, so-and-so who has PTSD because of whatever, because of sexual assault or Vietnam or whatever, they're saying X, Y, and Z. The more that I'm visiting with these women or men who have had betrayal happen are saying X, Y, and Z. Is this trauma? And she did a ton of research, and there's been other research that's also been done. She's my favorite just because I did training at AppSats through her, and it was amazing. But what she found in her research is it paralleled to trauma. And as you think about it, what trauma is, I mean, you know this because you've been learning this and you're doing the therapy thing too, yes?
Yeah, I'm a year into school, got a year left.
Yeah, so you're learning
Lamar, go Cardinals.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. So trauma triggers certain spots in our brain, right? And it creates this fight, flight, or freeze. And that is absolutely what happens in folks when they have been lied to, betrayed in a relationship. So, yes.
So
that's a long...
No, totally.
Yes.
But I guess, because I want to make sure this is clear, because I think this was really hard for me early in recovery to like grasp.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for a lot of guys. Like, it's Vietnam
Yes. Yeah.
trauma. Like, it's Genghis Khan trauma. Like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only... Just like... It's the same as if she just came back from Iraq.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, this went off the rails.
Yeah. So I'm going to unpack that just a little bit so it makes maybe a little bit more sense. So how do I want to word this? I'm trying to like not sound like a therapist so that it makes sense to people that are not therapists. Okay. So when an experience happens that your brain, your body, your emotions, your spirit cannot process because of the magnitude of what it is, your brain, your body, your spirit, your emotions doesn't have the ability to integrate that and doesn't have the ability to regulate from that. That is trauma, basically.
Can you give me like an example outside betrayal? Like, give me a simple one.
Yes. Okay, so let's say you are an adult who has a parent who is an alcoholic. They show up on your porch. They start banging on the door. They start screaming. They start like going bonkers. They've never done that before. And it's 3:00 in the morning. And you're like, what is even going on? Is somebody breaking in? Is somebody like, that would be an example. Another example is like you're driving home and all of a sudden you see smoke and you're like, I'm pretty sure that's on our street. And your heart starts to race and you turn down your street and you're like, holy crap, I'm pretty sure that's our neighbors. And you drive closer and like you're all of your systems are go because you're in survival mode, right? And then you're like, I won't say a swear word. I almost did. Oh crap. That's our house. Like that's my house, right? And you can't even process that. You can't even process like, were the kids home? Do we have a dog? And is there a dog in there? And what about this? And what you can't, your brain doesn't have all it can say is, are you alive? Are you safe? Are you breathing? Right? Like that would be maybe an example of an experience that you don't even know how to categorize. You don't have a file for it. You don't have a box for it. And when that happens in your brain, automatically, like, thank heavens, thank God, literally, that he created our brains to where we go into like fight, flight, or freeze. And that is what's happening every time that this stuff is coming out to her, right? Mm-hmm. Or to him, if that's the case. So
we can just use her.
Yeah. Okay.
So we know that
guys have this happen too.
Right?
Yeah.
There are women that have sexually compulsive behavior, and there are men that are betrayed. We get that, but for sake of simplicity,
perfect.
We'll just men are the addicts.
Easier for me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So does that break it down a little bit? Like, does that make a little bit more? I mean, I know it makes sense to you. Do you feel like that would make sense to your guys' listeners?
Yeah.
I mean, what doesn't make sense to me is how me looking at porn equates the house burning down.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you have to remember, Becky, we do a lot of minimizing over here in Addict Land.
Y'all that can't see this, because none of you can, legit, I'm on one corner of the table. They're not. So when they say in Addict Land, Like
Yeah,
legit,
yeah.
there's a land.
There's a land over here.
Yeah. Well, we're social distancing.
We're social
This is
distancing.
being recorded during the whole
respect it.
COVID-19.
No, I
day.
appreciate it. You guys are fine. I'm just joking with you.
Right, one of the biggest breakthroughs that addicts have.
Yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
like the people that I work with and the letters we get from Ashamed, when people share their stories on here,
Yeah.
is finally having the capacity to quit minimizing their own behavior and
Yes.
sit with it.
Yeah.
Like that's a
Yeah.
revolutionary experience.
Right.
Like I remember one for me, this was 4 or 5 months into recovery and I chose to come forward. Like, so I was gung-ho recovery day one.
Sure.
And my sister said to me, she's like, oh, like we're not actually close. Like if you thought like that we were close, like we're not.
Like to you about you and her?
Yes. Oh yeah. Like just straightforward. And she's just like,
Dang.
she's like, and I'm sitting there with two of my sisters and they're like, oh yeah, like we know, like we were sitting at your wedding being like, don't know what's going on, but be interested to see how that goes. Cause like they could sense the distance in me and they,
Okay.
like they knew. And I remember like, that was one of my minimizing denial moments that I was like, I legitimately thought we were close.
Yeah.
Like my mind was blown. Like it wasn't even like a hurt moment. It was
Yeah.
like, wait, really? Like I thought we were close.
You're like, what planet are you on?
And they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
no. And so I think to James's point, like I'm already trying to minimize my behavior because
Sure.
I can't live with myself.
Yeah.
So, and that's hard. It
Yeah.
still is hard for me, if I'm being honest, to be like, I can't believe I've done all this crazy,
Well, and if you don't minimize it,
terrible
it
stuff.
creates a discomfort that's almost hard to bear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes
Right.
sense.
It
Yeah.
makes it too heavy to live with.
Right. Amen. Yeah.
Too heavy to live with. So like how over here in addict land,
Sure.
like help me connect the dots that James said beautifully. Like how is my porn use
Yeah.
or even the affair I had or the fact that I
masturbation or
masturbate
whatever.
and lie
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Like how is that comparable to the house burning down?
Yeah. So when you peel back like relational trauma, betrayal trauma, whatever you want to call it, like at the very heart of it is attachment. And so when we think about attachment, this is like so hard because my brain thinks therapist mode. When we think about attachment, we think about babies attaching to the mom or babies attaching to the dad, like babies attaching to a caregiver or something like that. But attachment goes throughout your whole entire life, right? So initially, yes, it is attachment, baby to caregiver or baby to parents. Baby to siblings even have a level of attachment, but your caregiver, like you attach to. Then as kids get older, that attachment shifts and they start to attach to their peers. And that's why like teenagers value so much of their friends' opinions and want to be validated by that because that attachment moves over into their peers. When you choose your person,
That's what my
who
wife says.
holds-
She says, Steve's my person.
Oh, that's great.
That hits home for me.
She's a keeper. Yeah. When you pick your person,
Yeah.
Steve was not my person. Jason was my person. I did date a Steve, but he wasn't my person.
What the is with all the Jason stuff? Jason names his kid after James, right?
I mean-
you break up with Steve, but marry a Jason.
There
Jeez.
might be some self-reflection there. I don't know.
Wrong.
So
Can I schedule an appointment?
with me, no. I know a guy. He's great. So when you pick your person, your brain, your body attaches to that person. Mm-hmm. And when you pick your person and you have sex with them, when you pick your person and you have them hold your hair back because you're puking in the toilet because you are pregnant with your baby and their baby, when you pick your person and your guts are on your stomach because you're having a C-section and you're like, he is never going to be able to unsee this in his life. And then he's like, you are so beautiful and I love you so much. And then that person lies for years. Your world shatters and it legit feels like your house is burning down and like you're in it. And you can't get out of it. So does it make sense to someone who has not had that? Maybe not, but I would explore if your wife came into you and said the same things or similar things and this wasn't an addiction for you, like she's your person. Like that would rock your world as well, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I think like so drugs have never been a part of my like substance abuse
Not your
has never
jam.
been a part of my not my jam. Never
Yeah.
been a part of my compulsive behavior.
Yeah.
And so I think about like, what if that happened? So I served my mission in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
So
That'd be a
substance
cool
abuse is
rampant.
learned that lesson.
Yeah.
So like, I'm like, oh, and that's what you look like when you're strung out on heroin.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so I imagine like maybe I could pick that one up with what you're saying. Because like I'm legitimately having a powerful experience right now talking to you because I'm like, what if, James, like you walked in on like Christy tomorrow and you're like, what? Like I came home early, like, why are there needles here on the counter?
Yeah.
And like, and you found out she was siphoning money out of your bank account.
Right.
And like, and then there's just this web of like, what if you legitimately...
And she had a druggie that's phone number was actually on her phone that she could call at any time and get what she wanted.
Right. Like I'm just thinking like, I'm putting James in this deal and being like, James, like, what if you legitimately went home tonight and discovered that Christy's been a heroin addict her whole life and hidden it from you?
I mean...
Well, right now that's laughable, you know, like I can't really imagine it. To me, that couldn't be.
But
right?
take that.
Right.
And that's, pornography, like that's laughable. Like that's not my husband. Like my husband, he's got his stuff, like whatever it is that he's, you know, he binge watches YouTube. Whatever it is that he does, he eats too much or he gets really angry with it. But pornography, like there's no way that's even pornography, right? Or masturbation, like we have sex pretty regularly and it's pretty great. Like in her world, no, I mean, there's plenty of other, not very similar. It's laughable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess that makes sense because what, like I'm hearing you say, James, like if that ended up being true,
it would shatter my reality.
It would shatter your reality.
Yep.
Like you can't even hold space.
Right. Yeah. Right now.
That could even be true.
Yeah. To me, that could not be true.
Because it goes in every aspect. Mm-hmm. Because then it's like, that's like, what about the kids? And wait a second, when we went on that cruise, did she use? How did she go a week without heroin? She couldn't have. Where in the crap did she find it? Did she shoot up in Mexico? If she shot up in Mexico, like who on earth gave her the drugs? Were they clean? Like and you go, brrr, and then you're like, I can't even breathe. Like I can't even, like, it's just, that's a good comparison. You knocked that out of the park. Amen. Yes.
I'm like good. Still thinking about it.
Yeah. It's overwhelming. Yeah. And it's fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so you take a mama who protects her kids to the death, right?
Yeah. So I'm thinking my own experience. I'm like, this is fight. Like I'd be like...
Yeah. And everybody shows up their own way.
Kids.
I'm a fighter as well. Like I'm a fighter 9 times from Sunday. Yeah. But like if somebody's a freezer, if somebody's a flighter, like you can imagine how that just shattered, I think is a really, it's the perfect way to put it. That's how it feels. And it's like, you can't even, where do you start? Like it's hard to even be like, wait, is my name Beckie? That's true, right? Like that's real, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure because that's been for 38 years. That's my name. Okay. What about that? Like every little bit, it's just like, you can't even breathe.
So help us unpack that a little bit because this is a frustration with addicts.
Okay.
I know
a frustration that addicts have or a frustration towards
this is a frustration we have in addict land.
Okay.
So in addict land, we have this frustration.
I feel very welcome in this land, y'all who are listening. Don't be sad. I'm on the corner.
Yeah, you're all welcome to come to addict land and hang out with us.
They just didn't want to give me the COVID.
We like to talk. Just didn't want you to get that COVID-19. Catch that COVID. Not joking about it. We know people are really suffering.
Yes.
You have to laugh or cry about some stuff.
Amen.
And we're already crying about the trauma, so we can't hold space.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I wanted to get at was it's hard, and I've experienced this. Like, I think this is the number one, at least one highly, James, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, area where addicts get real resentful.
Yeah.
Is like, so I'll tell you one experience I had.
Sure.
So Kayla and I are arguing about milk at the grocery store. I've shared this before.
Okay.
And she's like, it's cheaper at Reams. I'm like, no, it's not. It's cheaper at Harmon's right now. She's mad that I go to Harmon's.
Milk is cheaper at Harmon's, says no one ever. Can we just?
Okay, see, you're in the same place.
Can we just get an amen to that? Maybe there was a sell. Maybe it was a coupon.
Both these grocery stores are like a half mile from my house.
Yeah.
Like I'm in 7th East on Sandy. They're like 106,
Y'all that don't live in Utah, Harmon's is like the Trader Joe's.
Yeah,
and
it's
Reams
a little
is like
uppity.
the food for less.
Yes.
I mean, can we
said.
just, okay.
Well said. Amen. Preach. So I'm like, you're wrong, right? Because of course, and then now I'm thinking of Terry Reels, do you want to be right or do you want to be married?
Amen.
In that moment, I want to be right.
Yeah.
So I'm like.
Over milk.
Yes, over milk, right? These are the important things to gamble your marriage on. So
this was the hill I'm going to die on.
Yes.
Covered in milk.
Yes. This is my Vietnam.
From Reams.
Yes.
Okay.
So I go to Reams, like $2.45 a gallon.
Yeah.
I go over to Harmon's and I'm like $2.16, and I'm like, sup now? Watch this.
I'm gonna take pictures of it. I'm gonna do selfies with
it. So I'm already loaded with my righteous indignation, right?
Yes.
So I'm already a little bit like want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And the reason I use this example is like recovery's hard. Yeah. So when we do something right in recovery over here in recovery land, like we kind of want to be like, we did something right because we kind of are convinced we do everything wrong. So it's like we did something right.
We finally we want that pat on the back. Finally, I did it.
We want that pat on the back.
You want balloons. You want crepe paper. You want a party.
We do. And so we look at this and I'm like, okay, I'm right. And so I'm going to go home and be right. I get a call while I'm in the car. Okay. Both these grocery stores are 2 minutes from my house.
Okay.
And she's like, lit.
Oh dear.
So trauma response
through the roof.
Active.
Yeah. And you can feel it through the phone even, yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm like drive around the block on this one. Ooh, like, right?
Yeah.
And I've been in really good recovery like the last couple weeks. A lot of recovery. I'm honest right now. It's all going good. And so I'm just pissed.
Yeah.
And I get home and I'm like, well, you can be mad about whatever you want, but milk's cheaper at Harmon's. There's the receipts, you know? And she's like way mad. And I remember Becky just being so resentful about that in the moment because I'm just like, what do you want from me? Like if we're laying in bed and you're like, I don't want to have sex with you because I'm thinking about you with other women. I get that.
Amen.
Cool. Yeah. But we're talking about freaking milk.
Yeah.
And you're having some trauma trigger. So what I know now, and you get back to the story, is there was a lot of times in our marriage where I wasn't where I was supposed to be at the time I was supposed to be there because I was stealing money from the family business to go do prostitution. And so I know like logically that's what it's about, but like, and I bring up that example because like, help us make sense of that. Because as an addict, like, I don't understand why we're having trauma about the milk. Some sexual ad on TV, I get why that's a trigger. Some dude's objectifying a woman right in front of you, I get it. Yeah. But like the milk, our budget, something at our kid's soccer game.
Yeah.
Like,
can I unpack that a little bit? Ask more questions?
Please.
Okay, because I'm curious. So what was she lit about?
That's what I'm curious about.
Okay.
The time.
And she said that.
Yes. She's like, why have you been gone so long?
Okay.
And that was the dialogue.
And because, you know immediately, gosh dang it, she thinks I'm somewhere I shouldn't be.
So she's thinking, I just went to Reams and back.
Yes.
And I was like, oh no, I'm going to both stores to prove you wrong.
Yeah. So you took longer than expected.
Right. Yeah. And this distance and extra time.
Yeah.
Becky, we're talking like 5 minutes.
Yeah. It was, right. Okay.
So not like I've been gone an hour.
Mm-hmm. So here's something that I think is really helpful to keep in mind in an addict space. Trying to make sense of this is hard for her even, right? Like, so trying to make sense of it for y'all is going to be really hard because, at least in my experience with the folks I work with, now I'm a very direct therapist. I'm a very accountable therapist, even as a betrayal trauma therapist. So I don't know if that's because they found me or because I've trained them. I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. But the folks that I'm working with come from this space of, I know I sound crazy. I feel crazy. Why the F did I get so freaking frustrated about 5 minutes? And they're already like in my office, they're in this like shame spiral of like, I'm a crappy wife. Like I'm not doing my recovery well enough. Somebody who's doing their recovery better would have been like, yeah, babe, no problem. Like, I'm so glad that you found that. And you're right. Harmon's is amazing and whatever. Like, what's my problem that I didn't show up that way? Right. And so to try to make sense of it, I don't know that that's like possible because it doesn't make sense even to the person who's triggered sometimes. But at the end of the day, I think that when it's noticed that there's a trigger response, like realize that that's coming from a part in their brain that God created to keep them safe. Does that mean that excuses their behavior? No. Like somebody being in a space of sexual addiction and somebody feeling, being betrayed, that doesn't excuse the behavior. That doesn't mean that we get to...
Meaning the anger.
Yes.
Not her feelings,
no.
but the anger.
Right. So if she
the
was
acting
like...
out,
If she then like hops on the computer and Googles everywhere that you've been, and then the second you come home starts lighting you up and is like, okay, from now on, you need to check in with me every 30 seconds and...
Right.
Blah, blah, blah,
Shaming
blah, blah.
me or whatever.
If that's all happening, it makes sense why. The trauma is an explanation. She still needs to be accountable for that. And hopefully she's working with her therapist through that. And like, okay, this is what you do when trauma shows up. This is how to regulate your body. This is how to then have clarity, like that kind of thing.
Right.
But for you, you get to know that because of trauma, like to me, that's just a manifestation of trauma. Like that is
totally
right. Like that's the perfect example of, but is this trauma? Yeah. Because does it make sense when firecrackers are going off and Uncle so-and-so is under the coffee table with his rifle? No. Does that make complete sense to him? Sometimes he feels like he's a little crazy in that space too, right? But this is her in trauma. If it wasn't trauma, if it was just her deciding to be a brat, if she was just taking a camp in victim land, it would show up different because being fully transparent, those folks do exist in a betrayed space.
Yeah. Yep.
For whatever reason, when I become their therapist, I help them work through whatever that reason is. But there are times when folks do it. It is few and far between. I'm just going to be real. It's few and far between. And there are agencies that cater to that. There are agencies that feed that. There's therapists that feed that. You know what? You don't have to do a thing. He has done all of this to you. Mm-hmm. You just hold the line. You just start to do this. You police him. You do this. And he has to match up to every expectation you've ever had for the rest of forever because he looked at porn and touched his penis. Like that happens. It's not common. At least in the folks I'm working with, it's not common that people are take camping in victim land.
Well, and I would say like no one heals that way. Like we're not the authority in all things, but we've heard
that doesn't sound like really great therapy, right?
Sure.
And we've heard a lot of stories.
Yeah.
Right. And all the women we have who come on, right? We just recorded a story before you. They cross this line of empowerment about taking over their own life.
That's the good stuff.
That's the good stuff, right? And so when it's like not about that empowerment, that's a sad thing. And no, so I agree with you on that. And no, that kind of helps. I don't know, James. That makes some sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, she, the
I'm going back to the milk thing.
Yeah. The milk didn't make sense to Becky's point. The milk didn't make sense to Kayla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, she's like,
Amen.
what is going on?
Yeah.
And
well, and what helped me personally is that dialogue that they're having in your office about how they think they're crazy. As the addict, we don't see that.
No.
Like, did you ever see that, James? Like, because we're not safe. So all I see is the F you. Why did it take you an extra 5 minutes?
You see the fight or the flight or the
right. So I see the trauma.
Yes.
And that part of her that's like, I'm lost. I think I'm crazy. Like, that doesn't get shared with. I mean, Kayla didn't share any of that with me for, if I'm being honest, like years.
A long time.
Yeah. A long time.
Well, that's really vulnerable. That's raw. Like that's the stuff where you need to earn the right to hear that.
That's real.
Yeah. So the more consistent y'all are, the more consistent you are in empathy, the more consistent you are in honesty, the more you will earn that right. It's not just because you're their person doesn't warrant you just getting that. Now, forgiveness, last time I checked, is a commandment. We have to figure out how to do that. We have to figure out our time frame and God's time frame in that. Forgiveness is absolutely a requirement at some juncture. I'm not here to tell you whether that's in this life or the next or whatever. Right. I don't ever
also doesn't mean you're boundaryless.
No. But forgiveness, absolutely, like God said we have to do that. And so at some point in your existence, whether it's here or later, that's going to have to happen. Trust is not a commandment. The only time trust is shown up in Scripture is when God says, trust me. Trust me. That's the only time that that's put in there. He's not saying trust him, trust her, trust you, ever. It's trust me. So trust is something that is earned, and God works for it. I'll tell you what, he has earned that for me. He has put his time in to earn that for me. And there are times where I've seen folks have a hard time even trusting themselves, right? Because that's one of those things that, like, a woman will be like, I trusted my intuition, like I trusted that this was okay, and obviously it wasn't, and all the second guessing starts to happen. That's okay. Like, it's not a requirement to even trust yourself initially. It's trusting God, and if you can't because you feel betrayed by him or you feel like that's where your work starts. Is trusting in him, because he's the only firm foundation. He's the only thing that you can absolutely count on. And that's the commandment. It's not trust your husband. Yes, we are told to cleave unto our him spouse, and none else or whatever. I add a ... with a star beside. Like as long as he's, safe.
Well, as I say, and that scripture and their scriptures are assuming safety and assuming that trust hasn't been broken.
So that was a lot to just unpack. I think staying on the honesty path, this is something that I've noticed that comes up quite a bit, is I didn't want to tell her because I didn't want to hurt her.
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell her because I knew she was in trauma, and I didn't want to traumatize her more. And what I think is so critical, and I even heard this on Autumn's interview with y'all just a hot minute ago.
Chris and Autumn.
That honesty is far better than lying about it and finding out later on, or not finding out later on, and thinking that you're safe because he hasn't told you about that, and then you go and have sex with him, or you go and be intimate and share something hard with him, and then you find out, oh crap, he relapsed and didn't say anything about, like, the honesty is way more valuable. So yes, is it going to hurt? It is. And it's going to hurt her for a hot minute. And is it going to feel like trauma for her? Yep. She's got it. Like, she can figure that out, but not having that honesty makes it super, super tricky. And falling under the guise of like, oh, I didn't want to hurt you. It's like, really? Like, try again. That doesn't,
Right. Well, that's the denial, right? It's like, nope, I didn't want to deal with the discomfort of knowing that I hurt you.
Yeah.
Right. That's the truth.
That's amen.
Right?
That's, yes, preach to that. Yeah.
It's never actually about her feelings when addicts make that comment. It's totally self-centered.
Yeah. And
having done it on many occasions, I'll call a spade a spade.
And I think that it can swing the other way, right? Like this black and white thinking, and how it swings to the other way is then not only am I going to tell her, I'm going to give her every single freaking detail about what happened. And I'm going to verbally vomit all over her. Yeah. And most of those details she did not need, because all you've done is given her all of these other spaces to be triggered. That's all that you've done. You're like, yep, and then I did this, and then I went here, and then I did this, and then as she's driving around and she's seeing this and here and this, then there's all those other triggers. So that honesty, like initially, that may be something that's like done in therapy. That may be something that you talk with your therapist about, or you talk with your sponsor about, or if you're in a group or whatever. But that's the other end of that. I'm not going to say anything, or I'm going to verbally vomit all over her. And I don't think that addicts are aware initially. I hope that they get there, but like, I hate calling it addicts. I want to call them like people with addictions.
That's cool. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. I hope that they get to this space, but initially when discovery happens, there is this relief that can come in to an addict's life, right? Or to a person with addictions, however you want to slice it.
Yeah.
To me, it's purple kangaroos, whatever. You call it whatever you want.
Yeah, we'll describe it as like this huge burden.
Huge burden off, right? If you're discovered. Yeah. If you disclose, still, huge burden taken off, right? Like either way. I would say discovery is way harder than disclosure for somebody who has been betrayed. But either way, there's this huge relief off of your shoulders.
Right.
That weight that you felt until you blah, 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 that all over the place is now on her.
Yeah. Yeah. Dorothy uses the example. She calls it the rock of pain. So it's like you as an addict are holding this rock of pain.
Yeah.
And your rock is like, hey, spouse, so I kind of want to deal with this. And it's like, huh, and you hand it to her.
Yeah.
It's like, what do I do with this rock of pain? It's not even freaking mine.
And it's so hard because like a lot of the time she wasn't expecting you to throw that rock of pain.
Yep.
So she's trying to hold that with the baby on her hip.
Yeah. I say, you got a baby in each arm? Why don't you just hold this? Just kind of wedge it on the shoulder there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Or she's working a full-time job or she's whatever. And it's like, where do
I have the space for this?
Yeah. So that speaks to what you guys are saying of like, no, I'm like, sometimes you get only in a space of thinking of your own comfort. You're not thinking about her comfort at all. That's another area where that happens, where it's like, I'm not putting her first. I'm not considering how she's going to handle this. Like, I'm going to spew that on her on a Friday at 4:00 when we don't have therapy for a whole nother week or whatever it is, right?
I can give you worse ones. I did it in public at dinner with friends.
Oh, there that is.
So then she couldn't get mad at me.
Oh.
That's my favorite avoidance one that I've heard.
I'm sure it's hers too. She probably journaled about it and framed it and it's above your bed.
Totally.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I've got the $1 million question for you, but I want to know if James has any other questions.
So I do have a question, Becky.
Okay.
I want to, this word codependence gets thrown around out there a lot.
Sure does. And like pretzels at the grocery store.
It's been around for a long time.
Come get your sample.
Hey.
At Harmon's, not Reed's.
Hey, I love those pretzels. My little children love those pretzels. So on this podcast, we honor the pretzels, Becky.
Okay, can we go on a side note just really fast? So like, this is my ADHD. Biggest epic fail of my husband ever was when he gave our 2-year-old who was allergic to soybean samples at Costco, and she swelled up and had a rash and had to go to the doctors. So be careful with the samples that you love. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that
go
was
ahead.
a dad fail moment.
Hey, the sample game's real, folks.
We all make
sample
mistakes.
game. Samples in the street with Beckie Hennessy.
So
sorry, anyway.
This codependence.
You can edit that all out. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
we never edit. What you don't know is Becky was like all worried. She's like, "You guys edit a bunch of this out, right?" And we all kind of glance at Jason. He's like,
sure.
You do too, right?
Compliance, denial. We're good at that. We do that as addicts.
It's fine.
Okay.
I won't claim it as mine.
James?
Yeah.
Throw it at me.
So, codependence.
Yeah.
This is a thing that's been thrown around for a long time. It originally came out with the whole alcoholic thing movement came along, and they kind of figured that people living in alcoholic homes, it developed what they termed codependent behavior among the spouse and the children.
Right.
And so how does this? How does
and it was good. It was good.
It was helpful then.
Codependent was good.
Yes.
But now it's
super, bad.
Yeah, and now but it's
it's
super.
Like you're codependent, and now it's
right.
like do not use codependent.
Yeah, but it's super thrown out all over the place, kind of like addict, right? I'm addicted to chocolate, blah blah blah. And it's just so these terms are getting thrown out there. But really, how does the spouse's, I guess, codependence or whatever really play into my behavior as an addict, and or what are some?
And can we use that word? Like, is it taboo?
You're welcome to. I probably will not, but you're welcome to.
Well, no, but that's what I'm just saying. Like, because it still comes up. People are like, I read. So we had Dave come and share his story on here.
Okay,
super cool story.
Yeah,
awesome. Stayed married. 8 years sober now. Cool guy. And one of his recommendations, he's like, one of the best books for me, and my wife would say best books for her, was Codependent No More is the name of the book.
They have a workbook too that you can utilize.
Oh, see there. So you know it. So so I'm with James. Like,
it's legitimately on my shelf right now as we speak.
Can we say that word still?
It. Just address
Let me unpack
codependence.
it. Okay.
Just talk to us about that.
So I'm going to first give you my ethos. So this is where I'm coming from. Here is my bias, because I am incredibly biased. So I am currently a certified clinical partner specialist candidate. So CCPS candidate.
Well, I think we would vote for you.
Oh, well, thanks. Great.
Yeah.
Your campaign.
I have to do like my hours and stuff like that to be able to become a CCPS. But it's through the Association of Partners of Sex Addicts Trauma Specialists. That's what APSAT stands for. So here's why this is a big deal. Y'all have CSATs, yes?
Yes.
Okay. CCPS is the partner specialist.
Makes sense.
Like CSATs.
Okay, right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And for those that
Certified-
don't know, what's a CSAT?
So I don't even know. Certified sexual addict
Addiction therapist.
therapist.
Yeah.
I didn't say addict treatment, sir. I don't know. Yeah. So I come from that pool. Barbara Steffens is who
Your
has
hero.
absolutely is who has kind of like started that ball rolling and was the big wig and now has retired and stepped down. And so someone else is. And everything that is taught in that training is like trauma informed, partner supported. And so when codependency starts to be unpacked, that is one of those words that kind of is like, because codependency can have a negative connotation in the idea that there's some kind of pathology. There's some kind of problem with
Help us understand what you mean
person.
by pathology. The word pathology.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
I mean, I know for
You
sure what
say.
it is, but in
Great.
case
You-
someone else
you
doesn't,
say. It's just like sickness, issue in like, yeah, sickness is a good way to put it. Emotional sickness, physical. Like if you have pathology in a medical world, you had, disease, medical disease or sickness prior to, right? So in that space, if you get an addict and a spouse who has been betrayed and you start to talk about things and you go into a space of like, girl, do you realize you have codependency issues? You've got this and this and this. Instead of focusing on like the trauma piece of that, then what she's going to hear is, oh, I created this.
yeah, it's your fault.
Yep.
that he's an
And it's
addict.
going to, that she's going to hear like, not only did I create this, but I picked him. Like something sick is in me that I picked him as my person because I'm super sick, because something is so broken in me. Right?
Oh, wow. So it's just, in a way, they'll shift that blame over to themselves.
Yeah. There's the potential for that, right? They don't always, but yeah. So
Which is inaccurate.
correct. So in the mental health world, we have a diagnosis for someone who shows up with a lot of the codependent symptomology. And it's called dependent personality disorder. And so if someone is showing up in this like needy, caregiving, I need you to validate me, I can't do anything without you, I want to fix you.
Okay,
and-
so like super enmeshed.
Yes. So if somebody's showing up in that space, we say, oh, I wonder if dependent personality disorder is present. We treat it and we move along. I mean, there are people who have been betrayed that have depression, that have anxiety, that have
Sure,
OCD,
yeah.
and you have to unpack all those pieces in addition to the trauma. Otherwise, it's just, it's not a thing because
So codependence isn't a thing anymore. And so people throwing,
In my
all you
vote,
people
my vote
throwing
is-
codependence around, you need to just stop it.
knock it off. So here's
So
the thing.
hold on, I'm gonna rope some God back in because I
Yeah.
legitimately have a question on
Sure.
this, and I don't think I'm the only one.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of, particularly people who are God church people,
Okay.
which we're super into Jesus here
Sure.
in Unashamed.
Yeah.
So do this like, so Kayla, we got married at 23 and 21.
Yeah, super
Everyone says she's
young.
young and naive, right? She's
yeah.
done for staying. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
So night this all goes down, I drop the bomb on her. She goes home. Trauma's up here, shock's
Amen.
up here,
Amen.
right? And she's like, can't sleep, wrestling with it. She has this God moment, and go listen to her story. She talks about it on there.
Sure.
Where God is just like, stay.
Yeah.
Like, and to use her words, Kayla would describe me now, is what you're saying. We kind of joked about it, but
Yeah.
tender to me. She's like, I knew then like that Steve was my person.
Yeah. Same with my husband. I feel
So that like she knew, and she's like, and she just had this like grace moment where she was like, could separate like my addiction versus the real me.
Yeah. That's
and she had this
huge.
grace moment that allowed her to stay through the early, really rough parts and later rough parts of our relationship.
Yeah.
Which were totally brought on by my addiction. So I'm getting the codependent piece, but here's the question I have. I'm a big Terry Real fan.
Okay.
If you don't know Terry Real, he's a big marriage and family therapist, writes books and stuff. He's doing that thing.
Sure.
And he's not the only one to say this. Some other ones have said this, but he says, I don't know what it is. And I want to say, Terry, it's called God.
Yeah.
But he says, I have seen so many couples over and over again, different scenarios, different whatever. But there's one truth I know. You will marry your unfinished business.
Interesting.
And so I've come to believe like there's purpose.
Sure.
And what I'm getting at is I hear from a lot of women will say what my wife said. My wife will now say, I'm grateful that we've had these challenges because it's made me the person that I am. And I knew this was where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to go through.
Sure.
And so like, how do you feel about that concept? Because to me, that's like not the codependence thing. Like because you're sick, you married an addict.
Right.
But I do see with women who don't deal with their betrayal trauma and they get out of the relationship, they do just go marry another addict.
Right.
And they're like, I would never marry an addict like that again. And sure enough, they'll be back here in Lifestar in 5 years with another one.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on the codependency thing, but then I'm not sure where that piece fits into this.
Okay. I'll move over into that space. Here's the thing to consider. When an addict is saying, oh, my wife is just being codependent, or even a betrayed person is saying, oh, I'm just being codependent.
Yeah, that's a no.
Yeah, I would get curious and ask yourself, is my behavior happening because of a trauma response? Am I in fear? Like, am I policing him? Am I looking through all this stuff? Am I telling him, no, you have to do this, this, and this? Am I in a space of fear? And if I am, and it doesn't excuse the behavior, it's not okay. Like, it explains it, right? If I am, then that's a trauma response. That's not codependency. That's a trauma response, right? So look into prodependence. Just get curious about it. I'm still trying it on. I'm not sure. I've listened to a lot about it. I've read a lot about it. It speaks a lot of truth to me and to my heart, but just start to get curious about prodependence. Rob Weiss, I think Dr. Rob Weiss is the guy that is, it's not a new thing. It's always been around, but it's a different way to package that. So if you're like, I can't consider that. The other thing to consider is some people research codependence and they absolutely feel like that's a fit for them. Nobody can tell them otherwise. That's okay. If that's what you've identified is your patterns and how you call your patterns and what you call the habits that you have, that is 100% okay. And nobody can tell you that that's not a thing or that that doesn't exist or that that's not real. Because if that speaks to you, great. Okay, let's start unpacking how to make those patterns shift. So consider that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just a big thing, right? So that's why kind of bringing that other side of it.
Yeah.
To not to balance the scales like one's true, one's not true, and this is a debate.
Just get curious.
It's not. But to get curious in this space, because people get stuck on, it has to be this, it has to be that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, there's a lot of gray here. Like, find what works for you. And you're kind of leaning into my $1 million question. So this is the...
Can you give me the 30-second commercial on what prodependence is?
So prodependence is the idea that...
would you like some elevator music to lead you in on that commercial?
Yeah.
Dancing would be great as well. It's kind of this idea, and I'm new, like I'm rookie in it, so Google it for sure. It's this idea of like, I did what I needed to do, and I'm showing up because I love them. Like, that's why I keep doing X, Y, and Z. And does that mean that it's okay? No, right? So a parent who keeps giving kid money after money after money, like to go buy drugs, the real core of that is because they love them. And sometimes we want to argue, well, if you really loved him, you'd blah, 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 blah. You can't tell somebody whether or not they love their kid or not. And so it's this idea that these things that are happening are coming from a space of, I'm trying to keep it together.
Yeah. It's coming from the place of goodness in you.
Yeah.
Just
it's a little bit different.
I mean, we've been recently talking about this as a group, that sometimes shame is a social construct.
Yeah.
And sometimes people actually shame out of love because they're shame-based.
Yes.
So I'm shame-based. So I shame my children.
Yeah.
And it's actually done out of love because I think that's how the world works.
Yes.
So I think I'm teaching my children how the world works, and I'm totally shaming them.
Yeah.
Which is not going to help them in their lives. So I mean, you can be trying to do the right thing and go about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I kind of like that concept.
So when you're talking about this other thing, what was this other thing? How did you mention that? Take me back to that.
You married your unfinished business.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm going to sit on it.
Which he makes it, that's not in the context of sexual addiction. He just says, all marriages, I guarantee you'll marry your unfinished business. You're super avoidant, you'll end up in a marriage where you can't be avoidant.
I'm curious about
You're
that.
super overbearing, you're going to end up in a marriage where you got to turn that off.
Yeah. I'm going to unpack that a little bit for myself.
Yeah.
Just because,
so the book is Terry Real New Rules of Marriage, if you want to go read his book.
Yeah.
Or if someone's listening and they're like, who the heck's that guy? And he wrote an excellent book on male depression in the 90s, which is game changer.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I'll try it on. I don't know
we
yet.
can do a whole podcast on just this section. So I'm gonna move us to our last question for you, Becky. And this is, to me, the $1 million question, because there are a lot of men who are truly working recovery.
Yeah.
Legitimately want to change. And sometimes they get discouraged watching their spouse's behavior. Not saying it's right.
Sure.
Not saying it's right. But they get discouraged because they don't know what they're looking at, myself included. I don't know what recovery from betrayal trauma fully looks like. I'm not sure what she's supposed to be going on with her. I know what's supposed to be going on with me. I'm in my program and I'm supposed to be doing this and feel this, and the other guys around me are too, and I get it. I'm not sure what it looks like
for her.
And so for a lot of men, it's like, I don't know if she's working her own recovery and if she's healing. And the bad end of that is just the frustration and resentment. Like, I'm getting my crap together. Can't you get your crap together so we can all be happy? And I'm worried that I'm going to work so hard to get my crap together, and then you're still going to be this traumatized ball and never deal with this, right? That's the resentment end, right? And then the other end comes just there's just a hopelessness, right? Like, it's just like, wow, I've damaged you so bad. We're not coming back from this.
Yeah.
And you're not coming back. So I've known men that are in that place too. So I guess as best as you can, as you're counseling these women, you see it as an addict over here in addict land. How can I know that it's going well for her, or what can I do to help her?
Oh, I don't know that you're going to like the answer to that.
I want the real answer.
I guess my question
We're unashamed, unafraid. You tell us the way it is, Becky.
You told me to bring the truth 2 by 4. So here it goes. Why does that matter in the whole scheme of things? Because at the end of the day, whether or not she's doing her recovery has nothing to do with you.
So the honest answer I will give you is why I think addicts ask this question.
Yeah.
Is because they're determining whether or not the relationship is worth it.
Wow.
Now that's me just skipping over the 5 things they say before
Obviously,
that,
sure.
and we just get real.
Great.
I think all addicts are asking themselves, and I've heard this multiple times, where it's like, this relationship's way screwed up. I lied to my wife when we got married. We show up. We're a decade down the road now. There's kids. There's a life. Whatever. But I totally have never been my real self. I've entered recovery. I now am my real self. I've always been unhealthy. She's always been unhealthy. I feel like I'm getting healthy. I'm not sure if she is. Maybe this just isn't my person. Maybe because addicts abandonment's a big one. Right, shame, and so there's this fear that I'm gonna get my stuff all together, and still we won't connect, and still you won't show up for me. So if we really just get don't say it out loud, honest, is the relationship worth it?
And so I got to throw this in there. This is also 90% of addicts are attachment avoidant. And so this speaks to that attachment avoidant personality that a lot of us addicts are, that fear of that attachment or abandonment.
Oh, here we go. Here it comes. At the end of the day, and this is in a betrayed space and an addict space. Your measuring stick, the filter that you utilize, again, has nothing to do with her and it's 100% in God's space. So that's who you need to take that question up with.
So if I'm understanding you, and then I'm going to let you unpack it, I want to make sure we're on the same page. I've come to you with the question. I said, the $1 million question is this, Becky. All of us addicts want to know, let the secret out. What measuring stick do I use, and how do I measure? And what you're saying back to me is, you don't.
Amen. Yeah. You stay in your lane. You worry about your stuff. You worry about your recovery. God's got you. God's got you. God's got her. You worry about your recovery. And if you're seeing where she's lacking, you need to take that up with God. And if you have concerns about, I'm not seeing that she's progressing and da-da-da-da-da, because my guess would be, and I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball, I'm not a fortune teller. My guess would be if you go to God and you're like, I just don't know if she's really in this, and should I stay, and blah, 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 blah. God is going to hit you with the truth 2x4 and get you focused back in your lane. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, and that's
or if it really is this relationship needs to end, he'll tell you.
He'll tell you. Mm-hmm. And you just have to be brave. If you go asking that question, you sure as heck fire better be ready for whatever answer comes down the pipes. And he may say, like he did to your wife, stay. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, and the flip side of that is, because in Addict Land, we own the whole addict experience over here.
Yeah.
And so I know of 2 men who have found great recovery, and they are in domestic violence relationships.
Get out of there.
Right.
Amen.
And so I sat with one of these men for several hours, and he couldn't admit it. And then we got there. And so I'm thinking this is really damaging. He was completely sober for a year before they even got married. And he was completely honest. And they've been married for 3 years, and he's been sober the whole time. Yeah. And he's not lying about it.
Yeah.
He really is recovery, and we should record his story on here. And so for someone on that end of the spectrum, when
God
there's
filter.
just this dialogue of, you just keep doing you and she changes, I'm there is some space.
Yes, 100%.
And some women are still human too.
Amen.
Where it's that's not going to be a godly relationship, and it's not about your recovery.
Yeah.
But I love what you just said. God will also give you that answer.
God will tell you, you just have to be ready for that answer.
And willing to follow that through.
Yeah.
That's a scary place. That's a scary leap to take.
And sorry, go ahead.
I just think for anybody.
Yeah. As heck fire better know that it is coming from God and not Scratch. Because Scratch will I call Satan Scratch, because he'll get in there huge if you're asking, should I stay in this committed relationship, right? But that's what boot camp's all about. That's what Heart of a Woman's all about, right? Can I not say that?
warriorheart.com. Okay. We mention it every episode. Go to boot camp. And we love the women's retreat too.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's amazing. I'm sorry, ladies. I'm not
already sold out, by the way, because it's that awesome.
Growl about it. It's great. But that is where you figure out, I get my validation from God. Okay. So if he's over here and he's
you're touching on James's favorite thing.
And he's a hot mess, and he's acting out, and he's doing all his things, I can still be okay because I get my validation from God. Oh, and it sounds so simple, friends. It is not. You have to unpack that stuff for years and years and years, and then you think you have, and then there's more, and it's just, But similarly for him, right? He can be in that space of I don't need to have balloons and crepe paper because I bought the less expensive milk. I don't need to get that validation that I'm doing well and that I'm rocking my recovery and that I'm amazing in it. I can get that from God. Yes. Because God's going to give it to you exactly how you need it.
Yeah. If God and other men. Yeah. And men can do crepe paper, by the way. Other men.
Can you? I will see. Send me pictures. I don't know.
We can back that up, Becky. We can back that up.
I just think that that space of, am I okay for men? Am I captivating for women, right? That space, God's going to answer that question. And the more we try to get our spouse to do it, the yuckier it's going to feel, and they're going to miss it every time because it's not their job, right? So that's where that God filter comes in. I put everything through the God filter. And y'all, you're green beans at the store, what brand to buy? Don't get ridiculous. But yeah, all the big stuff and some of the little stuff gets to go through the God filter because I trust him. And I know he knows what I need, and I know that he's got my back. Do I do what he says every time? we go to the mat. We're on the mat right now about a particular
That's
issue.
where we get into the grace conversation. And so, in the words of now, mine and Becky's mutual friend Lecrae,
Yes.
I think one of my favorite quotes from him is well said here. If you live for their acceptance,
You die by their rejection.
Amen. Oi. That
Becky.
is like vinyl on the wall, ladies. That is amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Lecrae, that's the mantra of his
Yeah.
book. Everyone should listen to Lecrae. I obviously believe that. So Becky, we appreciate you in your busy time, right? Career, mom doing all this cool stuff that you would sell your little treasure of knowledge about trauma and betrayal, trauma boat over here to Recovery Land to share some nuggets.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Good.
And so tell everyone where they can find you.
You can go to BeckyHennessy.com. All my stuff is under one umbrella. So I do therapy, I do coaching. I have a podcast called The Path of Imperfection. So you can go and find me there, and you can find me on Instagram. Y'all, if I'm being real, social media is just, it's not my jam. That is the truth. But I'm there, and I'm very original. Becky.Hennessy.LCSW. You're welcome. You'll be able to find me there really easily.
Excellent.
And I post every now and again, and maybe do stories when I remember to.
BeckyHennessy.com live in the studio with us. Hopefully that helps you better understand betrayal, trauma, what you needed. So hopefully for the women listening, they're like, yep, that's it. She got it. And hopefully for the men like me, you've taken something away from this. I know I have. James is nodding his head yes. Becky, you're awesome. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks
You
for
can
the
follow
opportunity.
us
It's
as
awesome.
well on social media, unashamedunafraid.com. If you'd like to donate, nonprofit organization, become an outsider, those who are accepted, bold, and unashamed, and help us fund scholarships for people to enter recovery for things like betrayal, trauma, and going to the retreats and addiction as well. You can go to unashamedunafraid.com/donate and give us 5 stars and tell me the podcast again, yours.
The Path of Imperfection.
And The Path of Imperfection.
Yeah.
Go listen to Becky and also give her 5 stars on iTunes because that's how the whole world judges us. And until we meet again.
Not God. God doesn't judge us
God
with
does not
stars.
judge us with stars on iTunes, but the world
Yeah, it
does.
does.
And there are aggregates,
Yep.
conversations about whether we populate or not in their search bars.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Becky, we hope that your boat comes by again another time here at
I'd love
Unashamed
it.
and shares your gold nuggets. And until then, everyone remain
Unashamed.